Mhm. Hello, anybody out there? Come on back. So, can you see the coronal energy around my head? I have many different frequencies of light going on here. This flashlight, the Christmas lights. Those are. This is an LED. That's incandescent. So it's just doing its thing. So come on back. Let's see. Mm-hmm.
You have a whole daughter. The way you treat me, the way you're gonna treat your daughter, I have a whole lot of help.
Okay, so back on there. So we're back. Oh, somebody's there. Anybody on the chat? Layla, JM. Anyway, so again, as I started off the last chat, it's like I'm experiencing something I didn't really want to have to experience, right? The conflict of two people, and she's a cutter. Do I really want to deal with someone bleeding to death? But see, these are the constraints of we as humans. We're constantly people are coming through by around us that have these problems. Do we give them any attention? Do we talk to them? Do we um, are we with them? You know, do we put out? How much do we put out? What can we do? And why doesn't our society, why does our society treat everyone that has a problem as if they're a criminal, right? Why is it punishment that's always like? So I taking this dog, right? This puppy dog that is a bull terrier and Elena. Good to see you, hey, Bubba. Um, so Anna, what do you think about when people come into your field who are distressed and unhappy and self-destructive and how do you walk away from them? Do you turn away? Do you not want to get involved? Do you get involved? How do you get involved? Um, what do you think about all this? Oh, I'm at a friend of mine's house. I've been babysitting her farm um, and taking care of her animals, and she went off to visit her children in the West, near in Arizona. And I've been here about a month. I've been fixing things for her and taking care of her animals, and so it's been very nice for me. I've been all by myself. There's a good internet here. It's warm, all the rest, and then my friend's step godson just dropped in and said, "Oh, I'm going to stay here." Arlene said it's okay. Blah blah blah, and she kind of did, but you know, um, I keep the place clean. They throw it around and then say you're messy. It's like really, and they have been I cook meals and they just go and get KFC. It's been interesting, right? And then they left for 4 days, and that was nice. They were gone, and now my friend's about to come back tomorrow, almost today, and the one reason he's here is he's going to go pick her up, and so, and it's just watching the relationship between the guy and the girl. He's very controlling, very anger prone, does what he wants. It's all about him. And she gets a short shift. And she, I can tell that she has hypoglycemia because he doesn't care whether she eats or not. And when she doesn't eat, she gets kind of antsy and pissed off. And then they argue, and then it's like it just happened there. I mean, she got so mad that he ran in here and hid behind me. So that shows his inabilities to deal with things, because you don't, his thing is to get more angry, right? My thing is to ask the question, so why are you upset? How can we work this out? What's going on? You saw me talking to her in the last live channel, and so and I did it in the dark, couldn't see her, didn't know who she is, and etc. But she does represent so well so many people who are in this problem. And not just women. Men are in the same problem. Men have, what's truly interesting about men have been demasculated. So, so Lana, did you leave? Are you still there? That's me, warm and oozy. I'm like a cinnamon bun. Demasculated. So basically, men get blamed for everything, right? They start wars, they do this, they do that. And in reality, men are, if you look biologically and historically, women ran the show for the first, 20 million years. And it's only been the last, 40,000 years that men have been, and they're not even the boss, because women still, have the chain on them. And men are never brought up, meaning the only reason I turned out relatively satisfactory is that I had great women. My grandmother brought me up, and she kind of she didn't mess up her boys, but she, was focusing on surviving. And so she didn't overprotect her sons. She'd let them do what they were doing. And they all turned out pretty good. I think that is one of the better ways, right? But within the tribal dynamic, it's this whole community, and as boys grow up, there are men in their lives who basically, through example, not by telling them, but by example, show them how to be a good man, right? And it's not being violent, and it's not being, great hunter. I mean, you got to be a good hunter to feed the tribe, but the real deal is that it's the we and me. And when you're in a relationship, I don't think I've ever had a bad, relationship with a woman, right? Now, it's been trying, it's been stressful, it can be a lot of things, but it's never been bad, because I've always found a great woman to be with, who was strong and smart and had a strong self-worth of themselves, and were already doing their thing. Meaning, I wasn't, they weren't following my lead. They were already doing their thing. So we were doing it together. And in all the relationships, I never argued. We never argued. We would discuss, we disagree, but we never argue. And so all of those girlfriends I've had, all the women in my life, um, never stopped loving me. I never stopped loving them. We just got to a realization, like my first wife, we realized, okay, we did everything we could do together. It's time. You want to go that way? Well, that's fine. I support it 100%. I'm always your friend. I always respect and love you. And so she did. She went up and did her thing, which was great, right? And I saw her a few times in the next 10 years. And the first time I saw her, it was about 4 years later, and she had a show at a friend of mine's gallery, and he called me up today. Don's having a show. Is that okay? I said, sure, it's your gallery. I said, her work is great. No. He said, well, you should come. And I did, and I brought, like, she loved roses, so I went down to the flower. In New York City, they have all these sections. They have the egg and butter district, the fish market, and they have a flower market, right? And what's really great is that they throw a ton of flowers away every day around 6 o'clock, right? And and they throw them in a dumpster, and you can actually go get them, right? I mean, at a certain point, they do throw them in a dumpster, but they have them in these cardboard boxes, and you can just scoop them up, and they look great right then and there, but tomorrow they'll start to wither, right? When you buy roses or flowers, they should stick around for at least 4 or 5 days, if not 6, and then start to wither. But the ones they throw away, they're going to start withering tomorrow, or but you get 6 dozen roses. That's what I bought her the first time she had a show. I brought her just a big armful of roses, and she looked at me and she knew every trick I had, so she just laughed. And I just started covering her in roses, and she was the center of attention, and so she had all these roses on her, and So anyway, her bodyguard girlfriends wanted to beat me up. So no, he's all right. And so we had a very nice, she did her thing being the center of attention, which she wanted to be, and I didn't distract her from that. A little later, we went and had a little cocktail and talked and had a very nice conversation. She goes, "Oh, I still miss you," and so I miss you too. But that's okay. I've been following you. You're doing great. Let's just keep at it. So, but that isn't the regular thing in relationships. But people have to realize. I have a number of friends right now. This young lady and this young man. They're not just. They're not, I couldn't call them friends, or somebody who I know for a long time and care about, right? I care about these guys as human beings, but I don't know them enough to really, and that's one of the questions of this conversation is, at what point do we jump in and help people? At where do we decide we're going to be the community, because we're not doing a very good job. I mean, all of the chaos and war and, and suffering that's going on is pretty much that, and it's coming from, the relationships. First of all, most of these people who start wars at all, that's a hard question. Yes. And I'm your Sensei Al-Bob. I don't ask easy questions, and we're coming straight up against it right now, because things are going to change. I mean, they already have, and things have been changing since ever. But within our context, it started with Christopher Columbus, Europeans coming over and just, wholesale murdering everyone and taking their stuff. Like, we just had Thanksgiving. What the real Thanksgiving? The Pilgrims, right? Pilgrims were merchants. They weren't farmers. And they came over, and they weren't like looking for religious freedom. No, they wanted economic freedom. So they got all the coin they could get together and got, a chunk of land, which was the Indians' land, but the king sold it to them over in England. They got on a boat a leaky boat and got here with. They knew nothing about how to grow. They didn't bring the right tools. They didn't bring anything. And they were expecting to be, a city to be there that they could be merchants in. It didn't happen. So they get off the boat. They're sick, and it's like fall, and they don't know what to do. They find, a low-lying, swampy, icky place, and they don't know what to do. And then they're like looking around to try to make a house, and there's no lumber yard, and they are not doing too well. And they find a whole bunch of food out in the forest, like in containers. Oh, wow, look at this. And what that was a burial ground. And these Indians had put it there as an offering to their all their relations, right? And so here's these, just dumb pilgrims eating a sacrifice. That would normally piss somebody off, to be so disrespectful to your religion, right? But not this Indian tribe. They said, "Oh, these poor people. Let's go." They're so stupid that they're eating the food that we put out for the dead people. And so they went and helped them, and gave them more food, and gave them things to keep them warm, and got them through that winter. And then the spring came, and they showed them how to grow things and how to plant things and what in the woods is good. But still, these pilgrims they were not set to do this. And so it was a drudge, and they didn't want to do it. And these Indians, who they could barely understand, how could they know anything? They're heathens. And so, they grow some food, and they have enough to just barely, but the Indians still help them out. The next year, they do better, and they have a pretty good crop. And they got, starting to build houses from the natural resources that are around, and they're doing it. So the Indians come, and they have a celebration and of the harvest, right? And now the Indians definitely have a zillion times better harvest than the Pilgrims, but the Pilgrims had a better harvest than they did last time, because last time nothing grew. So, that's, just so anyway, they had made mead, and they got blasted. And the Indians had their own, thing. But, at a certain point, the Pilgrims were unintelligible and getting boorish, so they left. And the Pilgrims said, those Indians are so, I hate them. They live in that really great place up on the hill, that golden city on top of the hill. And that is the golden city that all the politicians will always talk about, that Ronald Reagan talked about, that, many, the golden city on the hill. Well, that was the city. It was known. These Indians, had this beautiful spot on top of the hill, and all their farms and they were like it, right? And so what did the Pilgrims do? Well, they had guns. They couldn't, make anything or do anything because they were merchants. So they took their guns, and they went up there. And the night that the Indians came down and shared their big harvest, the Pilgrims went up later that night and killed them all. Shot them all in the head, killed every man, woman, and child, everybody, just because they had guns. The Indians just had, and the Pilgrims did it in a sneaky way, right? And so waited till they were all asleep, and just kind of, killed them until people started saying, "What's going on?" And then they started shooting them. So they killed them all, and they took their city and their props and their crops and karma caught up on them pretty quick. And the Pilgrims never really survived. They kind of wasted away. So they had this great place. They had this great, fields but they still couldn't farm them. They didn't know what to do. And now the Indians were gone, and no other Indians were going to help them. And so and the Indians didn't attack them. They just dwindled away. And now that is kind of what happened. But, the white corporate motif would say, "Oh, that's cancel culture." No, um, and that is what we're rights going smack up against. Our political system is obviously, has never been right. It always has, people talking about the dark state and the deep state. Well, it's always been dark and deep. And all you have to do is look at, our government basically allowed a pooch to occur. They allowed Jack Kennedy to get whacked. And he wasn't the only one. 4 other presidents have been whacked for the same reasons, that they were put in there by the hidden hand, the economic structure, the pyramid boys. And what's occurring is that if you go to, let's see, where's my little, here it is. Good old Cliff Hyde, right? Come on. He has a really, he is someone to check out. There it is, library. Let's go back a few. And this pandemic, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it is. How it's being used is a real issue, real question, right? And people are always using in politics. That's what it's all about, using. Where is my friend? DNA Awakening. That's a pretty good channel. Where is Mr. Cliff? So he is describing, yes, the name of the worm. Let's see.
Hello, humans. Hello, humans. There we go. Okay. This is the name of the worm, Woo. The worm that flies at night. That should actually have an exclamation point.
This is Cliff.
All right. So, actually, it should be called Jean Baudrillard in the name of the worm that name of the worm, Woo. Baudrillard was this French philosopher and social analyst. He was born in 1929 and he lived to 2007. So if you look at his life, his life and death actually were bracketed by major economic crises here in the Materium, in humanity. And so Baudrillard had an interesting early life, and Baudrillard was what they call a postmodernist. All right, so the label postmodernism is applied to philosophers the way that Dadaism is applied to artists and industrial or interior designers, and even industrial designers. Just a period of time in which there was a collective movement towards a particular ethos or a particular hue in thinking, so to speak, right? And so Baudrillard came along when there was this big examination of shit that had happened in the previous century in the 1800s with Karl Marx and communism. And so Baudrillard comes along, there's all of these academics. He's there, goes to World War II, he's French, and they're thinking about things like communism as communism is taking over and really trying to exert itself throughout the world. And Baudrillard comes up with this very key insight that Karl Marx was, now Baudrillard, let me stop and say that Baudrillard was commenting on communism, was commenting on Marxism as a organic creation. All right, so he was not commenting on the fact that Karl Marx himself was a royal sycophant and was nominally writing the anti-royal manifesto, the Communist Manifesto, right? He wrote it, but he was paid by all these royals to write it, so he was basically writing the manifesto of the controlled opposition to the royals. And the
Did you
royals
guys
knew
get
what
that?
they were doing, right? So they were using communism as a tool when they paid Marx to come up with all of this. Anyway, so
what he's saying is that communism was brought on by the royals, and the royals, who are the royals? It's the hidden hand, who basically puts out this illusion of what is known as capitalism. And what we have is crony capitalism, meaning there is, capitalism is supposed to be competition. There is no competition, 7 families rule the world, basically, and they're all interlocked transnational corporations. It's not even families anymore, and so and that's what Baudrillard was writing about, and that's Cliff Hyde is really good at describing that. Right? He was the first guy. He got a hold of me back in 2019 and said, "Hey, something's going on in China, in Wuhan." He said, "There's this military Olympics, and there's some other stuff, and people are getting sick, and it's very strange. It's not the usual kind of way things are going down. Something's going down, right?" And that was like in October, November, December of 2019. And then once it kind of came out in 2020, in January and February, he basically said, well, this looks just like biological warfare. And then he described it, and he showed the different spikes and the different variants that would happen. And he said that this thing is going to go on for 5 years. And biological warfare isn't there to kill a lot of people. It is to disrupt the everyday, disrupt the economics, disrupt the social structure, to disrupt the systems. And see, that's what the whole hidden hand, why there's a pyramid. It's a pyramid scam, right? Guys at the top, everything trickles down. There's a big base of money going, the majority of it going up to that top, right? And the systems that do it are covered by the pyramid. You don't see those systems. They're almost invisible because they're covered by the pyramid, right? Our dollar bill, pyramid, big seeing eye of Horus right there. And and what's happening is that, so you have this system, capitalism, money, work hard, Adam Smith, blah, 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 but to make it run, you need, transportation, you need, housing, you need food, you need this. These are all systems. And then they have subsystems, transportation and power and water, and then more and so as you get more and more and more and more subsystems, it gets out of the hand of the hidden hand. It gets it's no longer covered by the pyramid, right? And so that's where we are now. There's so many subsystems out there, past the walls of the pyramid, passed out of the hands of the controllers. They don't know what to do. So they start wars, they start conflicts, they start, like the relationship with these 2 kids, is a perfect example. They represent, they have been fostered into living this way. And this is what I was talking about, men not being brought up to be men. The thing that men, the testosterone, blah, 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 of what a man is, athlete, a jock, of this, of that, men don't cry. No, this is not what a man is. Sorry, a true, because you need male and female to have this, DNA double helix, right? And now you can have relationships. They're lesbian women. I've had many relationships with lesbian women. Many lesbian women have told me I'm the best lesbian they have ever known because I am not stuck in this, cardboard cutout veneer of maleness. I am the dude, Sensei Al Bob, the kid. I'm the character. I'm the cheeky monkey. I'm the person who feels what you're feeling. I'm the person who cares about what you're feeling. What makes me happy is when you're happy. That's why I do this. What do you think I'm doing this for? I'm doing it because it makes me happy to make you happy. Lana, I've known Lana a good one. She's been one of the folks who've been, the cadre who chat have been here for the last 2.5 years. Lana, how long have you been watching this thing? At least a year, if not a year and a half, right? And you might have even started watching me when I was on Johnny Boy's channel. And so Johnny's a great example. Now there's a guy he's a guy and he's a girl, he's a this, he's a that, he doesn't know what he is, right? And that's one of his real problems. He should just settle. I was talking about when I met Cary Grant, right? I met him, first time I met Cary Grant was at a party that David Bowie was having. And I had met David the night before this party, 2 nights before this party, and I took him around New York City to all the places that most people don't know, and showed him the side of New York that he was like, whoa, and that I had no idea he was David Bowie. He didn't look like Ziggy Stardust, and he wasn't singing any songs. He looked like he came right off the cover of GQ, and he was we had a really great conversation just walking down Broadway. We met at Danceteria. We left after a little bit, after I took care of my business there and made sure everything was shipshape. And we went down whatever 27th Street or whatever street Danceteria was on, went to Fifth Avenue, Broadway, went downtown, went to Fifth Avenue, dead ends into or is it Broadway that something dead ends, I think it's Fifth Avenue, dead ends into Washington Square on 14th Street, right? And so and Broadway cuts west to east and goes by Union Square, and then kind of the two roads kind of come together around there. Anyway, and then from 14th Street down, it's Broadway. Fifth Avenue stops at Union Square, NYU. And that's where this Frankenstein monster of a parking machine was. And on top of it was the gangsters watching the titty bar dancers do rollerball, right? And so they had the rollerball teams, girl teams, and put it on Channel 5 and to entertain the Godfathers. The girls would go, basically try to kill each other on roller skates, basically naked. It was quite an interesting thing to watch. And more interesting was watching the gangsters, throw pinball. It's like bowling, but it was smaller ball and smaller pins. And the pin boys they had no machine. The pin boys were setting them up, and the guys would throw it while the guys were still doing it. And they had a big net where the kids would jump out of the way, but still bang, and those pins would go flying, and it could get hit in the head or break a finger or what. And if you got broke something, they give you a Benjamin. And that's why these kids, so that's how I met David Bowie. I took him on a wild adventure through, we went down to that. Then we went down to Chinatown, had some dim sum. Then we had some, we went to Luna's and they were still open, and we had dessert. We had lemon jello and and all the great little Italian pastries and espresso, and then we walked along the East River above the FDR Drive, and then we cut over on 40 something Street to go to. He was staying at the Waldorf, and we walked to that other place. I always forget the name of the other place. There's the Waldorf Astoria, and um, there's another place. But anyway, we went there, and we went to the Oak Room and had breakfast. We had, eggs Benedict and lobster, and so that's kind of how I met David Bowie. And then after that extravaganza, David said, "Oh, tomorrow, not tonight, but tomorrow night, I'm having a party in my hotel room. Well, I'd love it if you were to come, right? And just it's going to show up around 7. Go down to the front desk, tell them that you're coming to the party. Your name will be on the list. They will, escort you up the elevator, take you to the front door. The guy at the front door will see if you're on the list, and you'll come in." And so I did. And there were all these people there. Some I knew, some I didn't. And but they had a great spread. So I was hungry, so I just got a big plate and put everything on it. And everyone was kind of standing and talking. But they had a nice couch, and this gray-haired old guy was sitting over there, kind of muttering to himself. And I went and sat down next to him and started eating away. And I had I had just piled high. And I said, "Do you want any of this?" And he said, "Yeah." So he started picking at it with his hands, and I didn't get upset because I was eating with my hands. And we're talking about all kinds of things. And so we got into talking about psychology, and he said that he had multiple, he had issues, and that his shrink had prescribed LSD, and it did great, and he's been doing LSD ever since. And we talked and we talked and we talked and we talked about all kinds of stuff, art and you name it. And he said, "I'm on LSD right now." And I said, "Oh, well, that's why you're so interesting." And we talked and we talked. And I said, "So what did you do?" He goes, "Well, I was a movie star." And I said, "Really?" Because this guy's old, gray hair, but he looked great. I mean, he looked amazingly good, And I was in my 30s, in my late 20s, and this guy looked better than me. He's probably in his 90s. Anyway, we talked, and he said, "Oh, yes." And I said, "Well, what movies were you in?" And he said, he's naming off these, North by Northwest and Arsenic and Old Lace and the Bishop's Wife. And I said, "Wait, you're Cary Grant?" And I said, "I love your movies." I said, "You are truly an amazing actor because you're always Cary Grant, but you're also every character." And I said, those, 3 movies that you mentioned were the best ones, because, North by Northwest, you're not a spy, but you are, but you're just the average Joe caught in a very strange situation. And, so anyway, so we talk and we talk, and I said, I loved because I had been visited by an angel myself. And I was telling you that story a couple of nights ago, but didn't tell you the whole story. And maybe we'll talk about that one. So anyway, I said, you were such because if you go see that movie, he's an angel, so he knows everything, and he can do miracles, and he just being near him, everyone just, "Oh, I love this guy," but he is totally innocent and naive, and he knows that what the shit people are going to do, but he doesn't, believe that that's truly who they are, that they're better, they're better, and they can do better. And all they have to do is do better, not try, do. And so we talked about that, doing better. And we were both going, do better, better. And he's tripping English. You want some? And I said, what? It's a little LSD. It'll do you good. And so he pulled this little thing out of his pocket with, eyedropper, put a couple of drops on my tongue. And I said, yes. Yes, let's see, how do you mean demasculated? I think I described that. Do you know anything about ADHD? Yes. So ADHD, all of those, see, that's why I stopped being a shrink, because they have this little book that describes all of these disorders, and that last D on ADHD is for disorder, right? And it's we aren't disorderly. We disorderly means we're not fitting as the cog we should be, right? So the people with ADHD, they're just not working out as the cog that the plutocratic corporate state wants you to be. So they'll have to give you some drugs. And now medicine is just giving you drugs, and it's all about making money. And definitely you look at the first 6 months of 2020, and Mr. Amazon, he made $40 billion. Well, everyone else was losing their shirt, and it's not bad selling these drugs, especially when the taxpayer pays for them to be developed, and you still get to charge for developing them, right? And I did get a vaccine because my healthcare and the other things I have for my diabetes and blood pressure and all the other stuff I have, those were expensive drugs. But because I have no money, I basically they give me those drugs, like my diabetic drugs. If I was paying that, it's $1,800 a month. I live on $400 a month. So they give me that drug. Plus, the doctors who I'm such an outlier. I mean, I should be dead a long time ago, but I didn't. And I should have lost my legs, but I haven't. My blood, I should, my liver, all my organs should be going, south, but they're not. So I get really high spread healthcare because I signed myself over to be a lab rat. And so to basically get that, I had to, I do what they say. I'm in my 70s. I'm not having any babies, whatever those stuff do, and they really, so I get really good health care. And I also get to see every other level of healthcare, because I go to a nonprofit. I go to 2 nonprofit HMOs that take care of certain things, and then they send me off to the more higher price spread guys who have, over the years, like it when I show up because they schedule me for their last patient. So yes, the doctors, look at the stuff and the tests and the this and say this and that. We talk a little bit about that, but then they spend the next 20 to 40 minutes asking me questions about what do I think about this protocol and what do I think about this emotional state, and their kids are doing this and how would I suggest them to react to it. So that's how I get healthcare. So yes, I had to get the jab because they said, well, if you don't get this, you're off the list, So that was no big deal. I had no, and one of my other doctors said, it looks both ways. Most of it is just saline. means placebo. And I don't know if he's right or wrong, and he said, most people who get the jab, like you, have the nudge and the wink saline. So I have no idea whether that's true or not. But I had no side effects, no nothing. But I take care of myself, I wash my, I have, where is it? I have this, my little spritzer. And Walmart's, they sell a little bottle of 75% isopropyl alcohol for $3. But they also, every now and then, will sell a gallon jug of 100% isopropyl alcohol. And, that's, so I bought when I saw that, I bought 4 or 5 of those, and I got enough isopropyl alcohol. So I carry this in my pocket at all times, and I, get a doorknob. I kind of spritz the doorknob. I open it. I spritz my hand. I do this, and the other thing is, I wear a mask, but I have. Where is my mask? It's actually a fashion thing that women wear, and it's a hair bungee thing, but it's about that long, about that wide. It's for people who have really curly, wild hair, and they can just stick it up there and stick it on their head. But you can pull it over here, and it covers your whole face, and you can double it over so you can have both. But, viruses are measured in angstroms. I mean, nanoparticles are what viruses are. So, unless you have some really super duper mask, but it's still okay to stop the gooiness of the carrier, but the virus itself is pretty small. So basically, if you wash your hands, and I hear no one talking about, prophylactics like vitamin C and, zinc and, D3. And there's a whole bunch of really good vitamins you can take as a regimen that really boost your immune system. So I do that, and so, and all of my high spread doctors are all for that. I mean, they're all, and they all knew that I practiced alternative medicine. So they really, and that I was a osteopath, right? And, and I did cranial sacral. I did a whole bunch of, but all these things were like mainstream in the 19th century. And they worked, not on everything, but I mean, our medicine is, one stage above, zombie, Zulu, snake oil salesman, So, but yes, I did get my jab. Hard to handle sometimes. Yes, they, first of all, they're on these, psychotropic drugs, all of those, lithium and all of these drugs that people with HARD and all the other alphabet soup disorders, those are psychotropic drugs, and they were designed. All of medicine basically comes from war. I mean, all the operations, you get a new knee replacement, a new hip replacement. These were all things they developed when you got blown up, right? And like me, they wanted to cut my legs off and give me prosthetics. And I said, because you need your legs and feet. They help, move the fluids all through your body. You have to move them, right? And that's why I still got them, because I moved them. And so that is the bottom line of all of this, is that you have to be the decider. You have to, that's what I was telling that young girl. Is that she, I said, so how much of this relationship do you get anything out of you? 5%. I said, really? I said, you got to do better than that, And so, So, what is your idea, James? Let's see. How do we get up here? Well, John Boy, I call him up relatively regularly because he has no one to talk to, period. Zip. He's been up there at the school all by his lonesome for the last 2 years. Easy, at least, if not going on 3. I mean, the last time I left him was September 2018, I think. So, 18, 19, 20, 21, because in actuality, I was up there for a year and a half going on 2, and he just kept throwing me out, and I was basically enabling him, right? So I said, well, I've learned I could, what are my 3 rules? Doctor, do no harm. Don't get involved if you have a positive exit strategy, and don't get involved unless you can learn something. So the 2 years I hung with John, I learned a lot, right? And I really am thankful for that, right? I wasn't staying there because I had to. I had plenty of other places to go, right? Just like now, I got other places to go. But I really care about John, and John is truly an interesting guy. He is, he's exceptional in a lot of ways. I mean, he's very talented. He has a good heart, but he could split you in half if he, had the right chemicals pumping through his body. He's, always talking about committing suicide. But the hairy edge of that is, people get tired of hearing, I'm going to kill myself, going to kill myself, going to kill myself, right? And then people don't pay it any mind, and then they do, right? And I've had a lot of friends and a lot of people I've known who killed themselves, like me. I killed myself. I gained 200 pounds working in the corporate world because I knew it was a corrupt thing, but I was having too good of a time. I was enjoying. Forget one slice of To Die For chocolate cakes. I freaking ate 2 chocolate cakes. I mean, it's I gained 220 pounds in 10 years. And then I died in a plate of spaghetti. And then I didn't die, and I reaccumulated myself and lost 240 pounds. So I'm down to 220. I've gained a few because when I'm out in the deep green, I just eat things out of the forest and out of my garden. I don't really get food from the soup. I mean, I get some things from the supermarket, but not really. And I don't eat bread. I don't eat fast food. I don't drink sodas. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. But in the last month and a half, I've been on the bop, and I've been hanging with folks who take me out to restaurants. So I've been eating a good deal of restaurant food, and I've been cooking for myself and from the supermarket, not from the forest. So, and I haven't been walking around. When you're gathering things out of the forest, you got to walk a lot. You got to walk through a forest. Even though I've made trails that make it so I don't kill myself. But anyway, we all commit suicide. And the minute you were born, you are on the way to die, which should give the heads up that, hey, this isn't you. This body here is not you. Your soul isn't even you. Your soul is just the server in your Akashic record. What you are is spirit. And you are spirit in co-creation with love. And that's why the world is so screwed up, because we're not doing that. Ergo, we can't move forward. And that's the rub. Have we gotten the jab? Yes. Have. Yeah. And then how is Johnny? Let's see. That's a great story. I got a million of them. Well, thank you, James. I am glad that you appreciate my stories. And like I said, I got a million of them. But that's because, one of the gifts I have, and one of the, I don't want to call it an issue. But anyway, the bottom line is, I'm pretty good at doing things. But I don't, and there are certain things that I am like top notch, excellent, numero uno, right? Electrician, healer, artist, and I'm getting better as a writer. All of you guys should go check out my novels at xratted.blogspot.com. You can also try and look at it at griotpublishing.blogspot.com. And that's GRIOTTE publishing. I have that on my little toolbar. I hit it, bingo, I go straight there. And other people have gone and looked at my writings, but a lot of people say it's too hard to read. That's because every sentence, every word is a key to a symbol, right? Everything's a metaphor in my writing. Everything, it's like a Greek tragedy, put through the prism of I Love Lucy. That's my writing. I'm James Joyce on acid. So yeah, it might be a little, and you do have to read certain things 3 or 4 times, but when you do, you have this thing called an epiphany. It's like, whoa. Yeah, that's so $1,800, and people, unlike me, I said, okay, I'm dead. Okay, no, I'm not dead. Okay, they want to tell me. Okay, I'm not going to do that. Okay, I'm gonna, and then I realized that with, I was making, good money, but I wasn't rich. No one in America, no one in this capitalist world is rich, except those morons, the poster boys, Elon Musk and those guys. And what do they do? I mean, Weasel Dick, Micro, Larry, that guy made $1 zillion, and then what's he? Oh, I'm going to give it all away. No, he's giving it away in a way that he's going to be, the ruler of the world, or he thinks he is. That's the real issue. He thinks he is. No one's going to be the ruler of the world. No one's going to be famous. No one's A-lister. Forget about it. Unless you are happy with yourself, you are just a zero, right? Look like you are 50. Yeah, and I'm 70. 70 something. Yeah, I was born in 1950, so that's how old I am. And whatever you do, if you feel good about getting vaccinated, go for it. As I observe the statistics that they're coming in, they're really doctoring the statistics seriously. And the way we were shut down in 2020, that was obviously not. I mean, we've had pandemics before. We have some experience with this. And so, we had a really worse one. The Spanish flu killed 60 million people in 1 year. So my mother, she lived in upstate New York near Watertown, and her aunt had this big house out in the woods. And for Thanksgiving, they went out there, and it was snowing, and they took the sled and the horse, and they just made it to Auntie's house. And she had lots of food, and she had, heat and water and all the rest. Nice, fancy, big house. And she was, everyone was off the grid, And so she had a totalitarian house. It had very strange little technologies in it. And when I used to visit her, I would play around. She had these heating elements Now we're attached to no electricity, no nothing. But there's a little switch, you hit it, and it would get hot, like cherry red. It wasn't burning anything, it wasn't running anything. It was like, and they were in fireplaces, but there were no chimneys. And the chimney kind of, went up, and at a certain point, it had all these vents on the wall, so the heat would come out into the. So anyway, they Thanksgiving they're having in 1917 or 16, whenever that foo was, and they got snowed in, so they were there from Thanksgiving to the New Year's, and they finally got out in January, and they went into town, and half of everyone in my mom's grade died. Every kid, like 80 kids died. She was the only one in her graduating class, and that's why she graduated. She graduated high school at 16. My mom was one sharp cookie. It's kind of, I got her German rocket science brain, and so and also she loved to have a good time, and so do I. And she loved the good life. When my dad, he needed to be a millionaire. So he spent his whole fucking life being a millionaire. And he didn't have too much fun because he was always buying stuff to show off to the other millionaires, right? My mom had a good time with my dad's money. How to handle men with ADHD. Yes. So, Lana, you're an athlete, aren't you? You could take that person if they're in good, if they got, 2 legs, 2 arms, everything kind of works. Go running with them, go canoeing with them, go do exercise with him. And that will, and there's certain foods that do well. And ADHD is a lot like hypoglycemia, meaning if their blood sugar, and it's a lot more sophisticated because it's dealing with the brain, not just your pancreas. So there's certain foods that allow your body to create certain hormones and proteins that give balance, and that's why they call these things diseases and disorders, because you're not orderly, you're not balanced. Disease is the lack of ease, right? So one thing, athletics, get them running around, right? And then start, if you like cooking, and if he likes cooking, you start cooking together and see what he likes to eat. And you get lots of green, like fennel and all the different kinds of parsleys and everything green, right? And have him chew on them and not chop them up. Just, take a sprig and have him chew on them and see if A, he likes them, B, he feels better when eating them, C, what kind of feeling he gets from it. What kind of foods? Now that's where you're gonna have to do some homework. Because I'm on the bop. I mean, I have my magic box here. Let's ask Google. We can do that. Come on. Oops. What foods are good for ADHD?
According to Attitude, foods rich in protein, lean beef, pork, poultry, fish, eggs, beans, nuts, soy, and low-fat dairy products can have beneficial effects on ADHD symptoms. Protein-rich foods are used by the body to make neurotransmitters, the chemicals released by brain cells to communicate with each other.
Okay, that was easy. Let's see. Are there any vegetables, spices, or herbs that are good for ADHD?
According to Healthy Place, but for those who do not cook as often, incorporating herbs and spices can seem intimidating. Nonetheless, they are part of a healthy diet for ADHD adults. Turmeric, saffron, rosemary, thyme, and sage have all been shown to boost blood flow in the brain, improve memory, and promote antioxidant production.
That's why I take them. I don't have ADHD, but the blood flow thing is good for my cholesterol and et al. Right. So I've stopped taking those pills because their side effects were so and everybody's different, you know. Like the first couple of diabetic drugs I had, they gave me the cheap, crappy stuff and nearly killed me. The side effects were terrible. But this $1,800 thing does really good for me, you know, and it also does good things to my liver and kidneys and other drugs. And now that it's been around for 10, 15 years, they've realized this drug is kind of a wonder drug. Just like, what is the drug that, they call it a horse tranquilizer, but it's not. It's actually a drug that has been made for human beings, and it was seems to be really good for Joe Rogan. You know, got COVID, and he took these supplements and this drug that a doctor prescribed for him. That was, you know, and the guy who made it actually got a Nobel Prize for it, and that's what I'm talking about. Why aren't they talking about things like that and vitamins and washing your hands? I mean, that's the number one thing. Don't pick your nose, don't rub your eyes, and wash your hands. You know, have a spritzer bottle. Yeah? And, you know, I stay away from people who are coughing. You know, you're coughing over there, I'll move 10 feet away, you know. So you got that, Lana? I think that right there, those proteins and those other drugs. I mean, just play. You know, go do what I did. Google. You know what foods are good for. You know, and what vegetables and herbs are good for. Right. So, and start cooking with that. See how he does. Right. So you like this guy? Is he? You know. And so that, you know, earlier on, I was talking about people who are having issues, and at what point do we intercede? Where do we jump in? How do we do that? When we see people suffering, you know, should we go to their help, you know, or just, oh, I don't want to get involved, you know? And that's my question to you, Anna, because I've seen a lot of people have to deal with people who, yes, I got it. Thank you. Okay, good. So this person is someone who's important to you, right? And this will be good for you because you will learn what someone being important to you is about. Because if you're ready to help somebody who has some serious issues, that's a good thing, you know? At what level do you go, you know? Now, you know, here's a challenge, right? So I'm always up for challenges, you know, and they're, you know, but you got to take I have my 3 rules. Doctor, do no harm. You know, do not get involved unless you have a workable exit strategy and you're there to, you know, assist the well-being of the innocents, you know. And the third one is don't get involved unless you can learn something so you can do better. So if you're doing all 3 there, then that challenge is definitely worth it. And if the person is sweet and nice and likes you and treats you good, even though they are a challenge, you know, my second wife, she would might have said to people that I was a challenge and that, you know, she was Italian. She was a Roman and had Sicilian blood. And She was a fashion designer. Her father was the Albert Einstein of diamond cutters, right? She grew up as a princess, and then he cut the Hope diamond for Harry Winston that had a curse on it. And within 4 years, he died of alcoholism. So did her mother. So when she was 16, she had no one, zip, no one, no money. And the city took her out of her rent controlled apartment, because her parents were dead. So the people who were on the list were gone, and the daughter just, and they wanted to, send her to foster care. She said, "Screw that." And all she had was her Catholic school uniforms, and she like gave up on Catholic school, and she read. She was an unbelievable, brilliant person. Read, and that's why we were always readers. We were like cats, cuddled up in each other's arms, reading books. That's all we did, other than sex and everything else we did. But anyway, she was a fashion designer of unbelievable amount, right? And she was, a total psychic. Beyond psychic. She was a channeler, right? But she didn't know it. It's the first time she really knew she was a channeler. So the first time we made love, and she went into state, and these voices came out of her mouth, and they weren't hers. They were other people's voices, right? And they were speaking languages that I was a pretty good linguist in those days, and I couldn't figure out any roots. I couldn't. No Greek, no Latin, no Mesopotamia, no Sumerian, no. I wasn't getting anything. And one of the characters did speak English and kind of translated. And I started tape recording them, because when she came out, I said, what? She goes, "Oh, what happened? It's an hour and a half. What happened?" And I said, "Well, man, the first time," I said, and that's the first time we ever made love, and which was our first date. Even though it wasn't really our first date, because we met a month and a half earlier at a kind of new age kind of whoop-de-doo thing, and she was wearing a red, this unbelievable outfit where she was Red Riding Hood, and I was making a film. I had a film company, and I had my crews interviewing all these people, and I was up in the ceiling in the follow spot box with a walkie-talkie and binoculars, saying my crews, "Okay, you guys go over there, you guys go over there," and I was orchestrating that whole thing from up on high. And so it's a black ceiling. No one knew I was up there. And I'm a good 200 feet above everybody. And I'm looking around, and I see this unbelievable, and I'm looking down at her. And so her bodice is so, 11th century. Her aureolas, her nipples were hanging out, right? And she had amazing breasts. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like burning a hole through, right? And she looks straight up at me into the darkness and goes like this: "Come here, buddy. Come on down." And I was like, and I got on the wall. "Okay, guys, everyone do whatever you want to do. I'm going off air. I'll see you next week. Bye." I ran down there right to her, and we just started talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. And 16 hours later, the janitors threw us out, right? So we walked, I took her down to, no, it was uptown. It was at the Penta Hotel. So, you know what we did? We went over to, what's the name of that place? Again, it was it wasn't the Oak Room. It was the other one that's like the Tiki Bar place that's in one of the fancy hotels in New York. And I took her there, and she kind of liked that. And she looked like she had a cape on, and me, I just had jeans and a t-shirt, and these guys knew me, so they didn't make me wear a tie or anything. And this one guy, "What is he doing?" And "What is he doing here?" And not only that, "What is he doing with that woman? Look at that woman. That woman's too good for him." And pretty much the 10 and a half years that we were together, pretty much everyone would say that. But once people got to know us as a couple, they would say, "Well, these guys are like the dynamic duo, He's Batman and she's Superwoman, It's like, she would scare most people. She was a Aries Virgo, and so there I was, being me, and so what happened was I met her there, right? And I walked her all over New York, and it was just like Woody Allen's, Manhattan. We're walking along, like I did with David Bowie, along above the this great walkway that most people don't even know exists. It goes from like 16th Street all the way up to 50-something Street, above the FDR Drive, and you're looking out at the East River. Anyway, so we're walking on that, and we are like sitting at every other bench and smooching and feeling and touching and wiggling around, everything but sex. But we're having a good time and really, 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 really liking each other a lot. And we've only just begun, right? Since the first 16 hours. Anyway, so the sun starts coming up. We walk down the road to where she has an apartment on Park Avenue. And, it's like, 7 a.m. and I'm thinking, okay, this is it. I'm going to go upstairs and, seal the deal. And I said, and I use the code word. So maybe I could come up to your place and have a cup of coffee. And I reach over to, and now we've been like sucking face for the last 4 hours and everything else. And she puts a card in my hand. I look at the card. She goes, "Call me today at 4." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I guess." She says, I basically am going to go upstairs and change out of this costume and take a shower. And I'd like to take now. Call me at 4, and then I got to get to work, and you got to get to work too. And so, which she was right. I had crews going to be waiting for me about an hour and a half. So I said, okay. So 4 o'clock, call her ring. She picks it right up. First ring. Hey, how you doing? We talk for 2 hours about everything. Just have amazing conversation. And I said, so, what are you doing now? She was, I'm busy. How about now call me tomorrow at 4. So I do that for a whole friggin' month, right? 4 o'clock. How about a cup of coffee? Nope. Call me at 4. So, and we're having these amazing conversations, 2, 3, 4 hours long. And so I, the 30th day is coming, and I'm going, okay, this is it. If I don't at least get a cup of coffee from this lady, that's it. I'm moving on. Because there were a lot of other, hey, you want to go out? No. I'm trying to be committed. And so anyway, she, 30th day, and I'm going, it's 4 o'clock. I'm just about to call her. Phone rings. I pick it up, and it's her. She goes, what are you doing now? And I go, whatever you want me to do. And she goes, well, you know where I live. Why don't you come on over? See how fast you can get here. And just hit, my apartment buzzer there, and I'll buzz you up, and we'll have a cup of coffee. I said, I'll be there, like in 10 seconds, I'm 30 blocks away. So I'm running, and Korean, corner store. They always have really nice flowers. I buy a big bunch of flowers. I'm running around. Now, I haven't eaten all day, and I know I'm going to be exercising, so I'm not just going to be drinking coffee. So there's Patsy's Pizza, one of the better pizzas in around 16th Street, and I think 16th Street and 2nd Avenue. Anyway, so I get 2 slices, bend them in half, just stuff them in my face, chew it up, and I run, hit the bell, go upstairs, elevator takes me up, come out, I go to her apartment, the door is open, not open, but, ajar and not locked, and I push it open, all the lights are out, she has votive candles, and a path of red rose petals, and the votive candles on the edge, going to her bedroom, and there she is, in all her naked glory, and smiling at me, and I'm a good 20 feet away, and her bedroom is all silk and satin, kind of a tent with mirrors everywhere. There's not any direction that you cannot see what angle you're doing it in, right? and she's got this amazing, gigantic bed with silk sheets, and I'm 20 feet away from her, and I have this arm of flowers, and she goes, "Oh, aren't you sweet?" And then she kind of gets this look on her face, and she goes, "Did you just eat pizza?" That's how sensitive. 20 feet away, and I wasn't I wasn't chewing it, but and I didn't. And I cleaned my mouth off. It was like tomato sauce all over my face, which normally there would be. And I said, "Yes, I did." She goes, "Well, go put the flowers. I have some in the kitchen above the sink. There's a bunch of vases. Put the water in them and put and put them around the living room. And so I'm busting for this woman, and so I'm like putting the flowers down, and then I go in, and she goes, "No, no, 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 go in, take all your clothes off, take a shower, brush your teeth. I have a brand new toothbrush for you right there, and your own cup, right? So brush your teeth, rinse out with Listerine there, and come and get me." And it wasn't like she had all the things that most people would buy at the drugstore. She actually made. So she had her own version of herbal everything. And so, and she was a great healer too. So anyway, she was a lot like me in a lot of ways. We just fit each other so amazingly. And she had been lonely because she was such a terror that most men were scared shitless of her. And that's what I'm talking about. She didn't emasculate men. Men just weren't ready for her, right? And so, and she didn't care. She had a most amazing selection of dildos that, I mean, they were like, she had a in her bedroom, this glass thing with, at least 40 different kinds of dildos on exhibition, right? And right there, that would have made most men, but I said, "Ooh, dildos." So I knew this girl knew what she wanted, right? So I did everything she asked, and came out all nice, scrubbed myself of every immaculate particle of pizza-ness off of me, and dust and grime and everything else that was on me. And I came out naked, without even like not being shy or anything about it. I just came out as naked as she was. And then she kind of got up and just kind of wriggled around me like something between a cat and a snake, and wrestled me to her bed, and we went on into a marathon, and just went woo. But once we had totally spent every ATP molecule we had, she went into state, and these voices started talking to her. And so I'd already been quite involved in esoteric, occult things, paranormal, you name it, and on every level, woo-woo-ness to scientistness to every level. And I had been involved in, I was part of the Theosophical Society. I was part of the Thule Society. I was part of the U.S. Psychotronic Society. I was part of the IEEE. I mean, I was quite, had a bona fides, as they say. And knew a lot of people. I was making toys for all kinds of people. There was I met this crew of what people would call Nordics, not from this neighborhood, but they had a lot of money. They had they had a bunch of buildings that we turned into all kinds of experimental facilities. And I was they were making them, but I was helping them make, let's say that, these very interesting paranormal gizmos. And that's, I kind of got into that when I worked for the SEAL Corporation out of California at Duke University, and they were making super soldiers, right, straight out of Captain America, right? And a good portion of the crew were, paperclip Nazis, and Mengele's boys, right? And so anyway, that was my pedigree. And she had also an interesting, not only was she top dog, she had a business where she made handbags. And she would wholesale her handbags for $500. The cheapest one was $500. And how she did, so her daddy was a diamond cutter, right? And he died of he cut the Hope Diamond and died of that curse along with mom, and left my sweetie all on her own, only with her Catholic school uniform. So she put on one of these and went down 6th Street to where the Hells Angels were. And the Hells Angels, they're like a corporation. It's not just, a bunch of guys riding motorcycles and causing trouble. No, they have businesses, right? They make money. And one of them was they had a whole line of leather jackets, leather belts, leather boots, bags, you name it. And she wanted to learn how to sew leather. So she went in there in this, right, thing. Her this unbelievably sexy. She had the most beautiful breasts, so she would always, she like 11th century, just showing the tops of her aureolas. She did that all the time. Anyway, she had, when she was, between, 13, 14, she, or someone befriended her and basically got her into martial arts so she could take people. She loved beating up men, and so she would walk. I mean, one of the reasons she walked around sexy was to tease guys and tell, "Oh, I gotta get her," and she'd just take them apart. And we would go out, and like I said, we'd go to all different things. I mean, we mostly went to really nice places because we're both making pretty good money, and both had these interesting pedigrees. So we had lots of different people to go visit and hang with. But occasionally, like, there were a number of pretty seedy bars that I hung out because in my early days, I thought I play pool relatively well. And I thought I was a pool shark, but no, I wasn't. I just played pool relatively well. Still can. Not as good because I can barely see. But I can see geometry in my head. So that you need to do that to be able to see, to do that. Let's see. I have to go away and get some peppermint oil just for a moment. I'll be right back. Okay? Hang in there. Just be right back. Well, I made a nice stew, and I like spicy food, but I have to eat it before 4 o'clock because if I eat it later, it doesn't do good with my digestive system. So anyway, my sweetie, she basically learned how to sew leather. And then she went from the Hells Angels to making bags herself and having a business doing that. And then she went from that to being the real artist that she is. and every bag she made was like a piece of art. That's why she could wholesale them to Neiman Marcus for like $500, and people would pay $3,000. She actually has some of her handbags, her pocketbooks, or those little things that women have, the little teeny handbags when they got an evening gown. She made those, and they were like, and she's got them in a Museum of Modern Art has them in there, and other museums have her pocketbooks as art, and that was her. But her factory, she had a factory in the garment district, like a 7,000 square foot thing with 20 women on sewing machines and another 20 people cutting and sorting and doing all kinds. So she had a pretty big page, she had 30 to 40 people, employees, and paid them $200 or $300 each a week, and their insurance and all kinds of stuff. And so she was putting out, and her electric bill was like off the hook. And so I kind of rewired her everything, so everything would be three-phase synchronous motors. And so her electric bill went from like $3,000 a month down to $600, right? And Con Edison showed up thinking someone was stealing electricity, and everything I did was totally, meaning back in the day, Edison used to wire all of their stuff the way I wired her factory, and but it didn't use any electricity, so they didn't make any money. So they went to the most inefficient, Edison way of doing things, thus costing the ratepayer lots of money, like her, right? So I did that, and the inspector came over, and I knew, hey, I'm a master electrician. I'm pretty well known for all the stuff I do. And so as soon as he came, she goes, you better get here. They're going to send this inspector guy over. They think I'm stealing electricity. And, so I said, okay, no problem. So I showed up, and I came kind of when she said I should come, but the guy was a little early, and she had him backed up, and she's like 5'6", and this guy's like 6'2", and he was like, I'm sorry, and she just had him backed up in a corner and was going to rip his gullet out, and she loved doing that. And one of the things that she would just go like this to me was, she goes, normally I would want to beat you up. And yes, we do wrestle, and that's loads of fun, which we did. We had she got these wrestling mats that she put in the bedroom, and we would really go at it sometimes. And but she could throw me around but we did it in a sweet way, right? That it kind of perked our sexual appetites. And also, once she realized she was going to go into this netherland, she started coming out as Xena the Warrior Princess, so, and then, she, I taught those guys, and they taught us all about, the our Akashic records. I mean, I already knew that. I was meditating that way, but, she was, it wasn't until we made love the first time that she went into state that she was really interested in this stuff. She belonged to all these things, and she kind of was she knew things, but she didn't go into state. But once we made love for the first time, she could. So we had quite the interesting relationship, and the things she said, she goes, the only and why I didn't go out with men is that they're so stupid. You're not, I'm a real catch. You know that, I am a tiger in bed. You know that. And you are the tiger I need to put in my tank. And you do everything for me. I never have to say, I never have to say, pick up your socks. I never have to say, to the point. So, we're married, we're living together, from that first night until the day she died, I was in her apartment. It was her apartment. Now, I had an abandoned building, I had a shop, I had my studio, but that's where we lived. And all I got was one drawer that I could put stuff in, right? Couldn't have tools, ain't nothing dirty. So she made me clothes that I, worked in. She made me clothes that she made me in my shop put a bathroom with a shower, a nice bathroom. So when she's there, she could go in it herself and not be, it had to be up to her specifications. And so I would take a shower, scrub myself down, and put on the clothes that she would have set out. She set out like these bags with suits in them. And every week I would get 3 of these bags and I would put them and bring them to my shop, and I would wear them from the shop to the house, but not at work because in that bag, right? And I'd wear it for a day or two and then the next one and the next one. And she made me outfits. She made these Italian leather jumpsuits that looked like, Buck Rogers. It had lightning bolts on them. And they had, so I didn't need a belt. She built pockets exactly because she came to work. She wanted, I want to see what, you wired my factory. I want to see you wire these other, so she would come and observe and sometimes help. She liked, kind of learning stuff, right? So she liked learning electric work. And more than 40 to 60% of the women that I've ever lived with would want to know how to be an electrician. I want to see how you do this, and I would say, sure, come help me. I need help. So, I never did everything that I did with her. I thought, what is going to make her happy? What's going to make her unhappy? I'm not going to do that, So I would do my best to do everything to make her happy. She knew that. She saw that. And I'm not perfect, so there were always things that she would just kind of go, "Arr." But she goes, you're the only human being that, if somebody else did that, I'd tear their heart out. But I just love you, So that's what we need to get to, that kind of attitude. So I did everything for her, and so she didn't, rip my heart out, I mean, she did when she died, and it's still... And, I don't, those 10 years were the best of my life, right? What can I say? She did more for who I am today. I mean, everybody in my life has been a good portion of why I am who I am. But she definitely... And we were put together by higher powers. Now, we were supposed to split up after 6 months. I mean, they put me she was getting really depressed and was, even though she was relative, but fashion is not an easy business, especially if you're not some gigantic corporation, because she'd make lots of money. I mean, millions of dollars, but she would spend millions of dollars on all the stuff the leathers, she would put diamonds in her, real diamonds, not really expensive ones, but real glittery, real bling. And so there would come a time she had this cycle when she'd make a lot of money here, but her expenses never stopped, and that's why I rewired her everything. So she wanted to spend $8,000 on electricity. And then the Edison guys I knew who came to inspect said, and they wrote a report. And then the top guys at Edison basically said, we want to see him. So I said, hey, that'll be fun. I'll go see these morons. Anyway, so I did. And this is after I worked in nuclear power and stopped the Shoreham power plant and did a whole bunch of stuff like that. And so they knew who I was. And I said, guys, back then, in the 1960s, when I was at Cooper Union and we were figuring out all this stuff that was already done in the 1890s, and why hasn't been done today, to help mankind, that's when we all kind of said, well, we're going to make that happen. And it's kind of happening. The electronic meters that everyone thinks, they're reading your mind. No. Your refrigerator may be reading your mind, but not your electric. I mean, your electric meter is like a, um, Wi-Fi hub of sorts. But we invented that so we could put solar panels on people's houses, and it would make electricity and put it into the grid when the house wasn't using it, and when the house needed juice, they could. And we were gonna, balance it out so everything was like Tesla wanted it and not Edison. So, I went and saw those guys, and they constantly made the comments, and I would see these. And once I got to see the high priest engineers, they would come and, I'd have gigs, if I did a big club or if I did this, or they would come, and they would come in the inspection thing. And then I would get the sense that, oh yes, they want a little invitation, because I would, the big whoop-de-doo opening of Xenons, and the reopening of 54 and the Saint, and Wetlands, and Danceteria. I mean, they all were pretty big, and they would have big parties. So those guys would always want to take their new girlfriend or their wife to keep them happy, or their daughter, or whatever. So, I mean, instead of, getting tickets for basketball games, those are the kinds of things I did. So, but they would always make comments on, like, how did you get that woman? And A, how can you stand her? And B, how come she hasn't killed you yet? Everyone's petrified of that little demon. And which they're just horny for her. And she just, Anyway, and we lived in this Park Avenue apartment. That was hers. That was her Park Avenue apartment. And the only two people having sex, and there was 60 apartments there. And there were this old couple who was on the floor almost above us, right? Not right on top of us, but just their bedroom was on the wall of our bedroom. And so when they were screwing, you could hear the old lady, and my wife was the same. And so every time we got on the the elevator together, yeah, hold on. Oh, no, come on in. How you doing?
You have a box to a charger?
What?
A box to a charger?
What?
Like a little box to a charger? Like a charger? So
Oh.
you plug into a wall?
No.
You have the little pipe thing? The little bowl?
Oh, let me come out in a little bit. Okay. Anyway, the girl who was talking to me, her boyfriend came back, and now they're lovey-dovey. And that's, anyway, they want me to come out and talk to them. And I don't think I can bring the the show with me. So I think I'm going to sign off. Did you break up with? Yeah. Well, I didn't break up. She died. She died in my arms of a heart attack. Now, my first wife, who was my training wife, we were together 8 years, and basically what happened, we traveled the world. We had a really successful photo studio. We did all kinds. In the Whitney annual, we did all kinds. We had real success, loads of fun, did all kinds of crazy things. Lived in Australia, traveled the world. You name it, we did it. But the first night we made love, the first afternoon we made love, I kind of twigged on this girl liked girls, because she was the one who said I was the best lesbian she ever knew. So anyway, there was that. And the other thing, our studio was DNA, Donna and Al, right? And they, at a certain point, and I had been a fixture of the art scene in New York, and she didn't want to be, now she wasn't behind me. We were together, it was DNA, right? She was first, Donna. And she just wanted it to be Donna, not End, So, because when people would talk to her about her art, they'd always talk about my art and compare my art to her art. And so anyway, after 8 years, she wanted to, do her own thing. And I said, okay, not a problem. And she had other grand things she wanted to do. So, yeah, okay, not a problem. I love you, and we still loved each other. But she went deep into that, and she became the lesbian photographer. So having, a male friend who wasn't gay would have been, the first time I went and saw her at a show at a friend of mine's big gallery that I built. And he called me up and said, hey, Don's having a show here. Do you care, or should I tell her not? I said, no, what are you talking about? No, of course. I want to, represent her, and you going to sell her stuff? No, go for it. He said, well, you should come to the opening. And I said, okay. So I did, and I brought a big armful of roses. That's the time I covered her in roses, right? So so it's interesting because now that's 20 years easy, and we got divorced in 81. And, so that's quite a few years ago. And Donna Ann McAdams, go Google her, and, was truly interesting. She was a Gary Winograd photographer, Ansel Adams, right? Her photographs look just like mine. Her juxtaposition, how she looks at things, I kind of rubbed off on her. And I don't do that anymore. I don't, publish my photos. I don't, hawk them. I used to be part of Magnum. I guess I still am. You don't stop being part of Magnum. And, but I don't do it anymore. I don't, send them any photos. I don't, put that stuff up because I promised her I wouldn't. Because she goes, and you can't take photos anymore. I said, no. I'm an anthropologist. I got to document, all the stuff I do, I document. So no. And so she goes, well, then you have to shoot with, a Diana camera, which is, the throwaway camera you get at Walmart. So Diana camera is even cheaper and crappier than that. But it has, 2.25 negative, and it's color. You can get Kodachrome, right? So I would get there's this company called BEG that develops movie film, but the end cuts they put in canisters, and they send you 2 rolls and these envelopes, and you send it back. And so back in the day, for $6, you got 2 rolls of film and the development and the prints, double prints, right? And 2 more rolls with 2 more packages. So I shot that way, and these cameras had light leaks, so there'd be flashes and slashes and double, triple over exposures, and that became really famous. People. I had a couple of shows at White Columns and a collective in Berlin, and that pissed her off because she said, you can only use it. And so the shittiest camera you could ever imagine I used, and I had a buddy of mine who printed. He was a really great printer of color prints, and he would do gigantic 20 by 30 prints, and for a shitty piece of crappy plastic camera, you had a cap. You didn't even have a shutter. You could adjust the f-stop. They had 3 settings, but anyway, it just irritated her. But so after that, I just have and once in one electronic, it's just on little chips in my computer. So, but anyway, it's interesting. Go take a look at her photos, and that is my style of taking pictures. Because what I would do is I would talk to people, and I get them comfortable with me, not just take the picture or try to do it on the sly. I would talk to them and say, "Can I take a picture now?" And not only will I take your picture, but I'll give you a copy. I was famous for always giving people, whoever I took a picture of, a copy of that picture, right? So I don't know if she's doing that. But so my first wife was my training wife. My second wife was my twin flame. And I still have one more left in me. I was told by the old Crohn's buddy who ran a tea shop that I, would have in my older age a young wife and have a baby to bring up. So that happens. I'm going to be around for another 20 years at least. So how long are you going to stay at your friend's house. Well, that's a big question mark. See how it rolls out. I mean, these kids didn't kill each other, so that's a good sign. Let's see. Why did you break up with your ex? Like I said, my first wife was my training wife. My second wife, she died in my arms of a heart attack. She just worked too hard. She just never let up. Never. So that's the way that goes. And so I've had many great women in my life, and they've all been special. But that my second wife, this little part in my heart. And I remember women who used to get jealous of my dead wife, and they get very upset because they couldn't do anything about it. She's dead. You know. Anyway, so I'm going to sign off here and go see how talk to these kids. Like I said, I can't take the laptop with me. Okay. See you tomorrow.